been Libertarian of the Year, is that correct?
Libertarian activist.
Libertarian Activist of the Year. So, so first off, we're going to have Ron from Safe Communities come up and talk to us about the great work he's been doing.
Thank you for that introduction. I'm talking about Sunshine Coast Safe Communities today and how to initiate and build a politically motivated community group. At a time when GetUp can pull in millions of dollars a year from well-meaning members, we see disorganised conservatives struggling to organise anything bigger than a barbecue without squabbling. Now is the time for community groups, churches and politicians to work together. So what can community groups do to help? Around 7 years ago, Raywin and I first learned about the halal certification scam and then read Ayaan Hirsi Ali's book, Infidel, about women in Islam. We joined Q Society and began in earnest to educate ourselves. Having corporate and science backgrounds, we instinctively knew knowledge was the key. It became obvious. The threat that radical Islam posed to Australia is real, but the public was still asleep at the wheel, as no immediate and apparent danger was visible to the naked Aussie eye. Then the local media announced we were about to get a mosque in the heart of Maroochydore. This attracted an almost spontaneous demonstration. Several hundred ordinary mums and dads turned up, and apart from some words over the head of the police to a gaggle of left-wing uni students, it was a quiet affair. We did not know it then, but we met some of our most active foundation members that day. We gathered members of all local interested groups, and our grassroots, non-party partisan and non-religious organisation, Sunshine Coast Safe Communities Incorporated, was born. Our first activity was to alert the local community, so we letterboxed 14,000 flyers with a team of willing helpers. We walked every day for 3 weeks. Most locals were not happy about a mosque in their backyard, but the media dubbed our information flyers hate speech. Our next activity was to write a petition to the council to demonstrate the level of opposition in local community. We gathered over 2,000 signatures on paper with a team of willing workers out and about in the streets and delivered them to council. Our petition promptly disappeared into the system without a receipt, a reply or even an acknowledgement. Clearly council were not interested. A lesson in politics versus public opinion. We next wrote a state government petition aimed at removing tax concessions from groups advocating violence and imposing Sharia law. This petition gathered over 10,000 signatures, this is just over Queensland, mostly electronically through the state government website. The State Attorney General, Yvette Darth, soon let us know that our petition would not be taken seriously. And if a mosque caused any problems, the police would fix it. Wow, this was great news. Survivors of a mass attack could expect to get a day in court for their dead relatives. Even I would prefer my relatives to continue to be a public nuisance rather than to be dead. The state government and police has everything under control. There is no need to worry. We have the strength that comes from diversity. Sarcasm intended. So began our foray into the world of political activism and our introduction into how our government systems operated. We are now on a steep learning and growth curve. Lobbying teams were appointed. Our local politicians were going to see a lot more of us from now on. No longer did we trust them to look after us. We were treated as a fringe group of right-wing extremists. Some of you may still think we are. Appointments with politicians and councillors were difficult. A much larger and stronger SCSC was needed. This saw us at market stalls and members enlisting their friends, neighbours and business associates. A wise man told us we would probably not win the mosque fight, but we would learn an awful lot trying, and that is true. He turned out to be correct. Along the way, we learned that Islam was a symptom of far greater problems. These included loss of Western identity, political correctness, weak governments, left-wing media, the long march of cultural Marxism through our universities and schools, and the influence of the United Nations. We attracted the worst possible publicity from the local left-obsessed media. Names like racist, bigot, xenophobe were commonly used. Fortunately, bad publicity meant we became more visible, and this attracted more members. There was no such thing as bad publicity, turned out to be true for us. Our road sign on the Sunshine Coast motorway, "No Sharia Here," attracted more publicity, and you guessed it, more members. Sunshine Coast Safe Communities commissioned an independent poll about the proposed mosque. Only 18% of the community were supportive. The local paper refused to publish results in a paid full-page advertisement. Instead, they replaced it with a full-page advertisement for Clive Palmer. Who would have thought Clive's money was better than ours? It turns out Clive is now history, and safe communities are still growing. Sunshine Coast Safe Communities was making its mark, holding large public education forums, attracting more attention from the local media as hundreds of attendees turned up to begin a journey of discovery into political Islam and its legal code, Sharia law. Making these public forums like CWA meetings, with tea, jam and scones at afternoon tea time, also added to the community appeal of our group. Intensive lobbying on the topic of planning law started. The local mosque, now approved by a weak council, had employed a surfing imam. That is until they discovered he was a Salafist, Sunni fundamentalist, and they sacked him. Apparently he was too extreme even for them. This imam was a revert, a former pot-smoking, wild-partying, surfing musician who had converted to Islam and mixed with some rather unsavoury characters in the Middle East. The local left-wing newspaper, however, loved him and gave him 5 full pages of welcome. When he called himself a Salafi on the way out, of course the media failed to see the significance. But watch out, he's in Logan right now. Our social nights were becoming sought-after events where over wine and nibbles people could get to mingle with right-wing activists. We started writing submissions to both state and federal governments. Our 55-page submission to reject the formation of a refugee welcome zone was presented to Council, who voted in our favour and against the local leftist refugee buddies. The Mayor, however, cried over the lost revenue. Other formal submissions were written for humanitarian immigration intakes, halal certification, 18C and freedom of speech, and the South East Queensland Regional Plan. Some significant recommendations were accepted. Our group focus was now much broader than Islam and mosques. It extended to opposing left-wing social issues such as late-term abortions, safe schools, and currently same-sex marriage. All these issues affected the safety and security not only of communities, but our families and, most important, our children and grandchildren. The importance of membership numbers became apparent when politicians started calling us for an appointment. Now, with a multi-talented committee and a permanent venue, Sunshine Coast Safe Communities was building revenue from donations, meetings and public forums. We celebrated our wins and invited guest speakers to our monthly meetings. Not only does liberty works, but for us a major lesson was that lobbying works. We are now working with local, state and federal MPs and on matters like female genital mutilation and underage marriage. While planning law and apathetic state governments continue to treat mosques as purely places of worship, our communities will be forced to accept mosques in their neighbourhoods, opening the possibility of poor integration, local ghettos, rising crime and even radicalisation. It is almost 2 years ago that, due to our persistent lobbying, Council applied to the State Minister for Planning and Infrastructure to make changes to the local planning scheme. Recently, they received a reply from the department advising they could not make these changes. However, in a letter to Safe Communities from the same department, the opposite was inferred. We have yet to resolve this anomaly, starting with more meetings and, you guessed it, more lobbying. Our focus after education has remained on politics, and to this end encouraging responsible political representatives and establishment of laws that reflect community expectations. Late last year, we ran a series of political strategy meetings, aptly named Working and Winning for Queensland. In these, Conservative politicians of all parties and church and community leaders worked on a blueprint for the coming Queensland state election. We know ego can get in the way. However, this election will be a test to see if we can all work together to defeat the Progressives. With other like-minded groups, we are planning a 2-day convention for approximately 300 delegates in March next year to get the nation's federal players together for dialogue, strategy, agreement, and perhaps even collaboration. A bigger goal, but of critical importance for our families, our communities, and our nation. Since our beginning in October 2014, Sunshine Coast Safe Communities has grown to over 900 members. Safe Communities Australia is now a national peak body, with local branches operating under a shared code of conduct and mission statement. Not every battle was won, but enough of them to see change and to encourage us to work harder. We have learnt a lot about building successful teams, managing personalities, motivating people, avoiding landmines, and working with other like-minded groups. Without a strong mission, people will remain apathetic. Basic human nature is still motivated by fear, greed, and a smattering of altruism. Australia's luck is running out, and we face even tougher challenges ahead. Sticking in the groove that has made us an economic, national security, and energy supply bind is a sure recipe for more bad outcomes. We need for grassroots activism to take a role in protecting our culture, values, and national identity. What started as concern about a mosque in our backyard has grown into many safe community groups, all working to secure a safe and prosperous future for our country. If we can do this, so can our leaders. Sunshine Coast Safe Communities are not purveyors of hate, just purveyors of evidence. Thank you. How are we going for time?
Thank you for that, Ron. Mark Stein says that if we push as hard for our causes as what the left pushes for theirs, we can win. And he found that in Canada. So I think the example of Safe Schools, you guys organising, initially they dismissed you, but you've become a real force. And I think that's a lesson for all of us who want to achieve things. So next up, we've got Rod, who's going to talk about his experience on single issue campaigning. And we're just getting there. Fantastic.
Thanks, Justin. As you can see, no expense spared on the PowerPoint here today. Look, thank you very much, everyone. I understand Jim Allen is next door and he's a fantastic speaker, so it really means a lot that you've given up your time to listen to me instead of Jim. I hope I can make that worthwhile for you. A little bit of a change of pace, I guess. First up, some prerequisite... Yeah, let's do that. Some prerequisite learning. We'll do that. Yeah, I know. And I work at a tech company. And so does he. So prerequisite learning. First of all, curfews and lockouts are bad. Large taxi monopoly is bad. Vaping is good. If you disagree with me, I'm not going to talk about the policy, but happy to, if we get time for Q&A, go through that. I think it's the connection. I also wanted to credit Scott Hennig. Cool. I also wanted to credit Scott Hennig, which is this guy that Justin will get up on the screen in a second. I've stolen a lot of the slides from a presentation he did. He's a good-looking man and he does a lot to fight for taxpayers' rights overseas. So these are the steps that No Curfew used to draw people into its campaign. Taking someone from a stranger, liking a Facebook post, getting them to like your Facebook page, sign a petition, get on an email list, didn't do as much of the taking of advocacy action, and then bring them along to making them a donor to a campaign. I'm going to take you very quickly through a few of the key parts of those steps that I think some people miss. Getting people to like your Facebook posts. So sharing good and relevant content and doing it regularly. Lots of people think that you can't, you might post too much or there's a lot of timing. The algorithms at Facebook don't really work like that. Just share good, relevant content, share it as often as you can, particularly in your peak campaigning times. It doesn't matter if you post multiple times a day. It doesn't matter if it's a couple of times in a couple of minutes. It doesn't really matter. Have an image with every post. Try and use videos with captions, use Facebook Live videos and use polls or surveys. I'll go into a few of these that people do wrong. Here's an example from Scott. The post on the left is actually a really important post, but without an image, gets engagement of like 15 people. The one on the right, a couple of images, far less relevant post, gets an engagement of pushing up towards 8,000 people. Facebook's algorithms like pictures. They want pictures. Always use pictures in your posts. Use videos and use them with captions. So it doesn't matter about the quality of it. Just get it up there. Sometimes people love a rant. You don't know. There's no magic formula to what's going to go viral. So a couple of these examples from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. The one on the right, the girl just was driving to work and she thought about this rant and pulled over a car, ranted into her phone. You can see her there with the headset on. And what's the engagement there? 3 million people. Get the thoughts out there when they're there. Try things, experiment with them. And the captions, important. In the bottom of the corner there, rev.com for $1 per minute. They're very good. Send them an email, ask them to caption a video. I don't know where it's being done, but $1 a minute, and it comes back within about 12, 24 hours. Very, very valuable. Most people watch videos on their phone without sound on at the moment, which might sound interesting, but it's like 70, 80%. It's a ridiculous amount. So captions are really, really worthwhile. What was I looking at here? If people like your posts, click on that post and use this tool that you see on the right-hand side. It'll show you everyone that's looked on it. Hit the invite button. I'm not sure if you're operating these pages or not. I spend a lot of time on the bus to work going through the Australian Taxpayers page and just scrolling through their successful posts and inviting people to like it. It'll invite them to like it. Once they've liked one of your posts, it gets them to like the page. They'll see more of your content. It's a really easy thing to do, and do it as soon as possible as well, while it's fresh in your mind. While the person's liked your post and they're appreciating your rant, get them to like your page. So they're just a few things that I think, they're a lot of the techniques that we used in No Curfew when it came to online campaigning that I think people miss. And I just wanted to go through a few of them. Hopefully there's something there in the practical for you to take away. And then for the rest of my talk, I just wanted to talk a little bit about why I love single issue campaigning and why I think it's really important. Most importantly, you get to engage with different people who think differently about the issues. I think Ron's talk was a lot about taking on the left, in a very battle-like way. That's not the experience of my campaigns for Uber or for No Curfew. It's more about finding the issue that you agree with these people on and taking them on their first step in the liberty journey. So I just find it so valuable because it gives you insights into how other people make their decisions. It tells you how they formulate their views. It also stops you living in an echo chamber of your own views. But if you really want to change people's minds, you have to start with understanding why they disagree with you and go from there. Building these coalitions of people who might not ordinarily see themselves as libertarians is really important. In both the No Curfew campaign and particularly in the Keep Sydney Open campaign, we've seen people campaign together from all across the spectrum who wouldn't normally work together. And that's a great opportunity for us to expose them to other libertarian ideas. I think it's more important for libertarians and conservatives and economic rationalists or wherever you've put yourself in this room, because our image is very much that we just somehow don't care about the community. The left, the socialists, the union guys have somehow got that wrapped up. And I think that by working together on these sorts of campaigns, we can help start to challenge those perceptions, give people a reason to look past our image and try and understand why we believe what we believe. So when you're talking to people, find their first liberty issue, because everyone is pro-liberty on at least one issue, and then just go from there. I want to play a quick clip. Let's hope this works. This is from Americans for Tax Reform, who had a vape bus go across the US. I'm just going to play the first sort of 50 seconds of it.
Hit escape. Escape out.
Oh.
Escape out of PowerPoint.
Try.
Senator Roderick, I want you to know something. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart. I'm a Democrat. I've been a Democrat my whole life. I like you. I really do. But you got to change on vaping. I voted. And I've always voted. And I always will vote. So you better take it serious. Because ain't nobody playing about this. People are tired of this. You're not treating us right. If you can get the law fixed for the people that like growlers, then you can get the law fixed for people that vape.
So that person there, her liberty issue is vaping. It's a lifelong Democrat voter appearing in a campaign video for Americans for Tax Reform institutions set up at the direction of Ronald Reagan. It's really powerful stuff, I think. So find people's liberty issues and just enable them to take their first step on the path on their liberty journey. Cheers.
Sorry? We have 5 minutes, so if we want to... Does anyone have any questions for our campaigning masterminds? Yes?
What's vaping, sorry?
Vaping. Do you want to... I can explain it. It's so they basically e-cigarettes that they create vapor, and there's absolutely no scientific evidence that it's harmful. And in this country, and in the health lobby, the cancer councils, all of these groups, they're all campaigning because it might be harmful. Yet, Tim Andrews wants to say something. I'm seeing your face. No, you're not.
It's multiple times less harmful, and it actually helps a lot of people who smoke progressively give up smoking and take a healthier option. And it's banned in various states, as you can see, throughout the US. And the Australian government and the Cancer Council and people don't want it legalised in Australia. They're trying to stamp it out when it's saving lives. It's bizarre.
Yeah.
Quick question.
Yes.
Is there any nicotine tax, like tobacco tax, on people when they buy it?
Well, you can't get the nicotine for it in Australia legally, so no. Yes.
My single issue is the climate change issue.
Right.
That carbon dioxide is a huge benefit, not harm.
Right.
Now, and that's very well in the single issue campaign.
Yes.
But you mentioned find the liberty issue which excites your particular people, but that could be presumably not one issue. I mean, this issue, this guy, this issue, and I don't quite understand the concentration on the one hand.
So just because you run a campaign on one issue, it means that you don't get dragged in to other issues when you're talking about that issue. It doesn't mean that you can't then go and run another campaign on another issue. So in my case, there's probably about 3 that I'm helping out on that I happen to feel passionately about. I'm not saying invest all your time in one issue. If you want to run 10 single issue campaigns, then go for it. Bring as many people as you can. But look for where, I think the saying is, hunt where the ducks are. So find the issue that people are really passionate about at the moment, where you can bring people to our side and target those issues, because that will be easier. So single issue campaigns are effective, but you don't have to limit yourself to just doing one issue for the rest of your life. I go mad if I only got to talk about one issue.
Yes.
I mean, you're talking about going with a single issue. That's a great idea. I think, how can you, a dozen people or 100,000 people running single issues campaigns, how can they be drawn to the next step, which is to care about this general? How do you take the next step?
So when you activate these groups and interact with them, there's certain amounts that you do online, but inevitably it ends up in the sort of activism that Ron and Ray do, which is face-to-face. And I think that's your best opportunity when you then have the face-to-face contact with people to talk to them and bring them around one by one. So I think don't discount the other side of things, because that's really important to those discussions. There's also no reason why... There's also a big benefit in bringing people to that traffic point online, because inevitably, in the same way that you would face-to-face, they still get exposed to other people commenting on the ideas and other comments, and they get that interest. So that might be dead. If you look at, probably Get Up are the most successful people at doing it in Australia. They've managed to run various single issues that satisfy a broad part of their donor base and do it successfully enough that they can run one issue and get a whole lot of donations on that issue. And the money coming from that issue, say it's the Great Barrier Reef, someone else might disagree on another one of their issues, but they don't really care about that, just as long as they're donating on that issue. So there's nothing to stop you branding different campaigns and bringing it under our umbrella the way that Get Up does. And I think if you ask most people who are conservatives, libertarians, economic rationalists, they would aspire to have something like that that fills their views.
Any other questions? Yes.
Online, with the various different groups, whether it's Islam or something else, people are pretty scared to put their settings on public. So it's always friends, essentially. And then it just becomes one big echo chamber where you're sort of preaching to the converted, essentially. Because if you go public, then it's like you want to target close.
Yeah, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, how do you get around that,
I'd like to answer that question. We have about 17 different Safe Communities website pages, and we're very aware that we are open to the public, so we're very circumspect in what we post up, but that doesn't mean that we back away from controversial issues. The idea is to go as close as you can to the edge of the cliff without dropping over, because if Facebook deems you to be crossing that line, your history. But we find that it's not an echo chamber of just a select group of devotees. We often push it outside the boundaries of people who would normally come across our pages by boosting it. And we see a total influx. Some of our posts get up to 500,000 people across them when we push them outside. So it's basically breaking the cell wall and pushing it out into the wider people. And it does attract different views, and that is good, because then we can engage in a conversation and we can then take them on the path and convince them that here's the evidence and where you've started and where we are. Let's see where we can get together. not in the middle, but together agreeing on the evidence. So there is a possibility. We work both online in a big way, but of course we also have face-to-face. We have monthly meetings of our members. We have many other groups that do the similar thing. A lot of face-to-face with politicians, and it's when you're in front of somebody, eyeballing them, and that person is the person who can say yes or no. That's the most critical time when you're dealing with politics. That's what we find.
If I could just add to that, we find that when you throw it outside your group boosting, you bring two sorts of people in. You bring in the name callers, and it doesn't matter what the argument is, they just call you names. You just chuck them out because you're never going to win an argument. But you occasionally get in really rational people who put up a rational argument. That is gold because you're holding that argument in public. So if your side of the argument is a better argument than theirs, you will have the opportunity to pull over some more people. That's very important.
The thing I want to add to that, that's the beauty of single issue campaigning. There's lots of people who won't like a partisan political post who will happily go and like and share a no curfew post or a post against closing pubs early. So that's why this is so important. People are happy to do that, happy to share. So get your messaging right and people are happy to jump on board.
Fantastic. On that note, we are out of time this morning. Tea, thank you, Raywin, Ron and Rod, for your wonderful contribution.